China is in the early innings of a bank run. Nobody's talking about it. What's up, guys? I'm Nobody Special, and on this channel, we spent a lot of time, especially last fall, covering the collapse of Evergrande, which is the second largest real estate developer in China, and a lot of other smaller developers that one by one were going bankrupt and defaulting on their bonds. And all throughout the fall, as I was covering that story, I mentioned that this was going to lead to a banking crisis in China, that you had to watch China's banks because all of these bonds that were being defaulted on were being held as collateral against Chinese bank deposits. Now, this story of the bank run started around April timeframe when 3 banks in China's Henan Province went down for maintenance. They put out an announcement to their customers that online banking would be unavailable and some branches would be closed while they upgraded their systems. Well, here we are in mid-June, and those banks still have not come back online. So it's either time to fire the IT guys, or there's something else going on at these banks. And what's more, we're not just talking about 3 banks in this one province now. Now we're up to 6 banks in 2 provinces. And as we'll see later on, this is already starting to spread to Shanghai, and it's starting to cause real problems in China. With that, we are going to shrink my big melon of a head and check out this article in asiamarkets.com. There's a run on Chinese banks, and it's being ignored by the world. Just like the Evergrande story and the Chinese developers defaulting was ignored by most of the Western media until it was too late, this story is getting very little coverage. Now, I have to add that it is so difficult to get reliable information out of China. You either have to get your information from Chinese government press agencies, which is totally manipulated and censored and scripted by the CCP, or the anti-CCP watchdog kind of websites that operate almost underground, and really the consumer is left to sort out this information for himself to see what's really going on there. So you have to take all of this with a grain of salt. It's virtually impossible to confirm any of this. Now, that being said, let's read a little from this story. In the anatomy of an economic crisis, a bank run is the point of no return. Bank runs occur when people scramble to withdraw cash from banks in fear of collapse. In the worst cases, banks' liquid cash reserves are exhausted, and not everyone gets their money, and the bank defaults. It's a grim scenario which fortunately has occurred rarely in history, such as in 1929 in the United States. Now, scrolling down here a little bit more, in recent years, it's become clear the Chinese people are losing faith in their financial institutions. There's been anger over harsh COVID lockdowns in Shanghai recently, while the collapse of China Evergrande saw rare public demonstrations as residents faced the prospect of losing their life savings used as deposits for housing. Return our money, the Evergrande protesters chanted at Evergrande headquarters in Shenzhen in 2021. The songbook is eerily similar at bank branches in a number of China's rural provinces right now. Multiple sources contacted by Asia Markets have confirmed deposits at the following 6 banks have been frozen since mid-April. And folks, I am not going to try to read the name of all 6 of these banks because I will butcher the pronunciation, I promise you. But again, I just want to point out, when this story first broke, it was only 3 regional banks in Henan Province. Now it is 4 banks in Henan plus 2 in Anhui Province. Reading on from the article, it's understood the banks with branches across Henan and Anhui provinces successfully issued announcements in April stating they would suspend online banking and mobile banking services due to a system upgrade. At the same time, clients reported their electronic deposits and online accounts, mobile apps, and third-party platforms could not be withdrawn. This led to depositors rushing to local bank branches only to be told they were unable to withdraw funds. By late May, images emerged on Chinese social media and demonstrations at the front of numerous bank branches. Asia Markets has verified these images with local contacts. Now, according to one user in Chinese social media platform WeChat, the protests are ongoing but are rarely mentioned in Chinese press. Of course not. Chinese press is run by the CCP. It has caused widespread concern on the internet, but the media attention is not high. The highest degree of concern is the 4 banks in Henan. And unfortunately, this story is not just limited to Henan. Check out this tweet from Jennifer Zhang. All banks in Shanghai have restricted depositors from withdrawing money. And in this picture here is a queue of people outside an ATM in Shanghai. Now, leave it to the Chinese Communist Party to whitewash this whole thing. This is on Yikai or Yisai Global. I don't know how to pronounce it. But this is China state-run media is saying Shanghai banks extend working hours to deal with huge demand after lockdown. Of course, they make the title seem like the banks are working ever so hard for the common good and that everything is fine. But reading on here, many bank branches in Shanghai are prolonging their business hours to cope with a flood of customers after the city's 2-month-long lockdown to battle an outbreak of something I can't mention without getting my channel censored was lifted last week. Shanghai Securities News reported yesterday. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China is extending the business hours of 20 of its Shanghai outlets to 6 p.m. between June 8th and June 12th to better meet clients' needs. For the past week, between 200 and 300 people have been visiting the Postal Savings Bank of China in Pudong District, which normally serves 100 customers a day. Yesterday afternoon, there were dozens of people, many of them elderly, lining up outside. Branch heads pleaded with them to come another day, as with only 15 staff members, it would not be possible to serve all of them, even if they waited as late as 7 p.m. Our outlet reopened on June 1st. People started to line up outside from 6 a.m. Many are senior citizens who need to deposit or withdraw money. Some even traveled from across town with more than 10 checks to deposit. Notice they're focusing on all of the deposits. People are trying to make so many deposits. People don't line up at banks like that just to make deposits, all right? People line up in banks in herds to get their money out of the bank. Keep in mind, this is China State Media we're reading here. There are too many customers, and the waiting time is now as long as 4 hours, she said. Our staff also has to do regular disinfections and other work. We offer people drinking water and places to sit while they wait. Oh, isn't that just so benevolent of them to offer drinking water while they wait? While they have to stop, slow things down, spray everything down, and wipe it off, i.e. buy themselves time to slow down withdrawals until the bank closes for the day. Cash withdrawals at the Bank of Shanghai were 3 times what they normally are on June 2nd. The lender is the largest pension issuer in Shanghai and distributes pension to around 1/3 of the city's retirees. Most of the people visiting the bank are elderly people who wish to collect their pensions. So that's the official Chinese government story coming from state-run media. Let's see what we get on Twitter here. Check this out. You let me know. Does this look like elderly people waiting in line to make deposits? That tweet is from June 9th, folks, just a couple of days ago, and this does not jive with the Chinese state media report saying that it was all elderly people looking to make deposits. What I see here is a lot of young people lined up outside a bank, and none of them look particularly happy. And I just want to show you this also on Twitter. Again, it's so hard to verify any information coming out of Twitter, folks, so you have to take this all with a grain of salt. I'm just reporting what my research has found. But this is translated using Google Translate in a Twitter thread. It says, in the queue of depositors at banks in various districts of Shanghai, the CCP has committed sins. Again, this is Google Translate. This is the beginning of money grabbing, and serious situations are behind. And again, here we go. People lined up outside banks, queued up, waiting in line, trying to get their money out of the bank. Again, folks, I have no way to confirm or deny this because the flow of information out of China is very tightly monitored by the CCP. And in totally, absolutely unrelated news having no relation to the bank run news, this news is unrelated. China is walking back virus loosening just weeks after reopening. China is starting to reimpose COVID restrictions just weeks after major easing in key cities, raising concern the country may once again employ strict lockdowns to control its outbreak. This is dated 3 days ago in Bloomberg, folks, and they are talking about Beijing and Shanghai starting to reimpose lockdown restrictions. And also in unrelated news having no relation to the bank runs, China bank protest stopped by health codes turning red, depositors say. This is dated just today. A protest planned by hundreds of bank depositors in central China seeking access to their frozen funds has been thwarted because the authorities have turned their health code apps red, several depositors told Reuters. Understand, in China, every citizen is given a QR code, and authorities can queue them up anywhere they are at in public, and they scan their QR code, and if it's red, they're a COVID risk, and they must immediately go home or be detained. What's the worst thing that could happen? Oh, I don't know. Maybe we could use this to identify protesters or certain bank customers that we don't want to demonstrate their anger in public. We could turn their codes red and keep them from coming out and protesting. Now, central governments would never abuse any authority like that. I'm just getting tinfoil hatty, I know. Why don't we read on from the article? The depositors were planning to travel to the central province of Henan this week from across China to protest against an almost 2-month block on accessing at least $178 million of deposits, which has left companies unable to pay workers and individuals unable to access savings. Rights groups have warned China could use its vast COVID surveillance infrastructure to stifle dissent. Without a green code on their smartphone app, citizens lose access to public transport and spaces such as restaurants and malls, as well as the right to travel across the country. They're putting digital handcuffs on us, said a depositor in Sichuan Province, surnamed Chen, who declined to use his full name for fear of government retribution. And why would anybody fear government retribution in China? I have no idea. The Henan provincial government, the National Health Commission, and the Ministry of Public Security did not respond to requests for comment. I'm shocked that they did not respond to requests for comment. After recent COVID outbreaks, some regions in China have asked travelers to register their plans online. A man surnamed Liu, who lives in Hubei province, found that his health code had turned red on the morning of June 12th after he registered the day before to travel to Henan. Liu had planned to travel to a protest planned for Monday in the Henan provincial capital of Zhengzhou, where he had hoped to get his money back. The protest would have been the latest among numerous such demonstrations in Henan in recent months. More than 200 depositors were similarly blocked, with their health codes turning red, according to members of a WeChat group. Again, this news is totally unrelated, no relation to the bank run that may or may not be happening in China. Certainly not. I'm not implying any connection whatsoever. Please do not blackball my channel. So long story short, folks, it really looks like China is in the early innings of a bank run, with the asterisk that it's very hard to get reliable information out of this country. But we're now looking at 6 small regional banks that have been shut down to depositors, people unable to get their money out, and we're seeing withdrawals in banks and delays in banks in some of the major cities. This is all indicating stress on the banking system as people scramble to get cash out. And again, this all harkens back to this Evergrande story and the collapse of the Chinese housing bubble. And I've been saying for months on this channel, the Chinese economy is on the brink. There is a multi-trillion-dollar deleveraging in progress in this country. Money and wealth is going to be wiped out, the likes of which China has never seen. And that should worry everybody in the free world, because you have a totalitarian regime in that country that will do anything to stay in power, including lock down their own people, start wars, or God knows what. And again, I am not implying in any way, shape, or form that these people who have their money stuck in the banks that won't give it back to them, suddenly having their COVID QR codes turn red, might have anything to do with their plans to go protest in front of the bank. I am not implying that at all. Please don't shadow ban my channel. Till next time, live small and dream big.